So today I'm going to be reading from Discourses, Book 1, Chapter 28. That we ought not to get angry with people in what is trivial or important in human life. That's what the chapter is called. Under what circumstances do we assent to something when it appears to be the case? So it's impossible for us to assent to something that appears not to be the case. Why? Because it's the nature of the mind to assent to truths, to find falsehoods unacceptable, and to suspend judgment in uncertain cases. Is this demonstrable? Accept the impression that it's now nighttime. I can't. Refuse to accept the impression that it's daytime. I can't. Accept or refuse to accept the impression that the stars are even in number. I can't. So, whenever someone assents to a falsehood, you can be sure that it's not the falsehood to which he wished to assent. For no soul, as Plato says, is willingly deprived of the truth, but that he judged something false to be true. All right, now, in the sphere of action, what is it that corresponds to the truth and falsehood in the realm of belief? Appropriateness and inappropriateness, advantage and disadvantage, right for me and wrong for me, and so on and so forth. So, is it possible to think an action personally advantageous but still choose not to do it? Yes. What about the woman who says, I recognize that what I plan to do is evil, but my counsels are ruled by anger? That's just the point. She thinks it's more advantageous for her to gratify her anger and punish her husband than to keep her children safe. Yes, but she's wrong. Make her fully aware of her mistake and she won't act on it. But until you point out to her what can guide her except her impression of what's best for her? Nothing. So why are you angry with her? The poor thing has gone astray in matters of supreme importance, and has changed into a viper instead of a human being. Doesn't she more deserve pity then? If that's the case, just as we pity the blind and the lame, shouldn't we pity those who've been blinded and crippled where matters of supreme importance are concerned? So whoever bears clearly in mind the fact that every action anyone takes is determined by an impression, and impressions, moreover, may be right or wrong. If they are right, he's blameless. If they're wrong, he pays the penalty himself, since there's no way in which one person makes a mistake and another is harmed by it. Such a person won't get angry with anyone, won't be irritated by anyone, won't curse anyone, won't blame anyone, won't hate anyone, and won't be offended by anyone. So, even great and fearful deeds stem from impressions? Absolutely. Iliad consists of nothing but people's impressions and their use of impressions. Abducting Menelaus' wife seemed to be a good idea to Paris, and going away with Paris seemed a good idea to Helen. So, if an impression had led Menelaus to feel that he was better off without such an unfaithful wife, what would have happened? We'd had lost not only the Iliad, but the Odyssey as well. So events as great as those depend on such a slight matter. What are these great events of yours? Warfare, civil strife, the loss of many lives, towns razed to the ground. What's great about them? Nothing, you think? Is there anything great about killing large numbers of cows or sheep, or setting a fire to the demolishing numerous swallows or storks' nests? Are you saying that the two cases are similar? They're identical. Human lives are lost. Cows and sheep lives are lost. Human housing is set on fire. Storks' nests are set on fire. What's great and fearful about these events? Or show me how a human house, qual place of habitual, differs from the stork's nest. The only difference is that humans build their houses out of timbers, tiles, and bricks, and storks out of sticks and mud. So you're assimilating storks and human beings? Of course, in everything that relates to their bodies, they're identical. You're saying that there's no difference between a human being and a stork? Of course there is, but not in that respect. How do they differ then? A little investigation will show you that the difference lies elsewhere. Might what makes the difference not be the human being's understanding what he's doing and is socially minded, trustworthy, self-respecting, honest, and intelligent? So where do we find what's important in humans' life? Where is what's bad and good for us to be found? Precisely where humans differ from storks. If this part of us kept safe, if it remains well defended, and if the person's self-respect, trustworthiness, and intelligence aren't destroyed, then he's kept safe as well. But if any of these qualities is destroyed, if this Troy is besieged into submission, then he too is destroyed. That's what's important in human life, is to be found. Did Paris' great failure occur when the Greeks arrived? When they put Troy under siege? When his brothers were killed? Not at all. No one is ever responsible for another person's failure. No, that was just Stork's nest being destroyed. He failed when he lost his self-respect, his trustworthiness, his respect for the laws of hospitality, his decency. And what about Achilles? What did he fail? When Patroclus died? Hardly. It was when he lost his temper, when he shed tears over a mere girl, when he forgot that he wasn't there to acquire concubines, but to make war. It's when right judgments are eliminated, when they are destroyed, that people fail, that they are under siege, that they are razed to the ground. Are you saying that it isn't bad for women to be taken away for enslavement, for children to be made captives, or for men themselves to be slaughtered? What's your reason for adding this judgment? Tell me. No. What's your reason for denying that these things are bad? Let's turn to our standards for an answer. Refer to your preconceptions. Now you can see why I find it impossible to express enough astonishment at the way people behave. When we want to assess the weight of something, we don't do so at random. When we want to decide whether something is straightened or warped, we don't do so at random. To generalize when it's important for us to know the relevant truth. None of us ever does anything at random. It's only when it comes to what is not just and the primary but the sole cause of doing right or wrong, or contentment or discontentment, or failure or success, that we act random and in haste. There's no equivalent to a balance or a standard to be seen. No sooner has impression struck me than I immediately act upon it. I mean, if impressions suffice for me, am I better than Agamemnon or Achilles, seeing that they were led by impressions to do these terrible things and suffer terribly? Doesn't every tragic plot have the same starting point? Why does Eupeithes Atreus consist of? Impressions. Some other name, Opidius impressions. The Phoenix impressions. The Hippolytus impressions. So what kind of persons pay no attention to this matter, do you think? What do we call people whose behavior is guided by every passing impression? Insane. Is our behavior different then? All right, so I think that's a good stopping point for today. Thanks, guys.